Hello, my dear friend, and welcome to the Spiritually Engineered Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the human experience from a spiritual perspective. Come on in, and I invite you to stay. When you hear the word maintenance, what comes to mind? What experiences come up for you? Is the idea of maintenance something like a chore or something boring to you? How do you feel about it? And that's something that I wanted to cover in today's topic. Particularly, I just had one of my own maintenance by having my annual checkup, annual doctor's visit, just to do some routine blood work and and then also the urine sample when they test everything. And yeah, I think I just felt inspired to want to talk about this because I think it's something really important when it comes to playing the game of life here in this planet, working with the systems of this planet. You know, with time, routines, and day in and day out, it's understandable that we actually, in our lives, maintenance happens to be an important aspect to it. And I think for starters, we can look at it from the material perspective. And when I say material, I'm talking about physical, like everything like that's tangible here in the physical world. Just to clarify that a bit. So like things like going for a walk, running a hot bath, stretching, exercising, eating, showering. Although some can argue that whether some of these are actually vital or necessary or just something preferred and things like that. Say showering, for example. Because believe me, not everybody takes a shower every day, or even some may even take showers once every other couple of days. The longest I've gone showering, by the way, has been like a week, I think. And boy, did I reek. But that's only because I was out in the wilderness going through intensive backpack training, instructor training back in college. And there was really no place to just take a shower. So in my defense, but I won't talk about me growing up and how I used to also not shower for various reasons as well. um, and of course, looking at other, examples, like think about chores in the household, sweeping the floor, doing the dishes, or running a dishwasher if you got one, cooking, eating, all the things, sleeping, of course. But I feel like when it comes to the maintenance, when it comes to material maintenance, we have that. And I know a lot of people, and myself included, can feel some type of way of like, oh man, I got to do this again. I got to do that again. Oh, it's time to do this, X, Y, and Z. What's your version of it? What's something that it's something routine and part of your maintenance that you're like, oh, why I got to do this? Why I got to do this? Have you ever felt that before? Maybe you feel about that with something you're currently doing and involved in right now. Something I think that will help, because I think when it comes to how we tackle these routines, the material routines, a huge component of it is also at least how we carry ourselves and how we tackle these routines. I think it's important to look at things from the spiritual perspective, looking at our spiritual routines. Now, what do I mean by spiritual routines? Usually by spiritual routines, I'm talking about things that are intangible, things that you can't necessarily just grab or, through the senses, but it's more about, let's say, like, in this context, my own spiritual maintenance related to my own mental health, the state of my emotional well-being, just my mood, how am I feeling in terms of that perspective. So like that, for example, and things that I think that I would consider to be a part of like spiritual maintenance would be like, give me some examples here: singing in the shower, make silly faces in the mirror, staying in for the weekend after maybe having a busy day at work and talking to people or just dealing with a lot of things, or finding yourself at the gym and you find yourself alone and the need to do an impromptu just dancing and just like no one's watching. And all that, of course. And even like when you look at, let's say, the maintenance, like exercise, for example, maintenance has a way of like, depending on the activity or even just maybe the intention, frankly, you could tackle maintenance from a dual perspective, from the material and spiritual. So it's like, imagine taking care of your own emotional, mental well being while you're also taking care of something physical that's necessary. Does that make sense? Because the thing is, when we find ourselves bogged down by material maintenance and just the idea of having to go through chores and things like that, whatever, or even showing up for work, anything having to do with routines, if I'm not feeling my best while tackling all those things, the day to day life, then there's a good chance I'm neglecting my spiritual maintenance. And I believe when it comes to spiritual maintenance, we all have our own unique needs. Not everybody has the same ones. We share materially, material maintenance, like our physical body, we share many, if not most, of the things that we need to take care of our body, like sleep, eating, all that stuff. But for spiritual well-being, spiritual maintenance, it's like, okay, understanding what is it that you need to recoup, to re-energize your energy, to feel back, to feel like you're in your tip-top shape. What will it take for you to feel your best again? And maybe you're kind of feeling down, you know? A spiritual maintenance could be like in the form of like, I know for me, when I'm part of when I know I'm neglecting my spiritual maintenance is when I'm starting to get so serious. This can happen sometimes when being at least in my experience, being a person of purpose and spirituality and all the things, growth, all that stuff. For me, it comes with having to deal with and wrestle with the balance between keeping it light while also working through the stuff that gets heavy at times. And so something that I could do for like a spiritual maintenance, I mean something that I do actually as part of my spiritual maintenance, I watch comedy podcasts. I watch stuff or at least a comedy podcast, but then also people doing comedy stand up to get me laughing, to get me raising up my energy vibration. That's just one example of just looking at the spiritual. And what's interesting is that when it comes to working with the material things, we're actually I feel like there always seems to be like this, at least even my understanding, when it comes to like the spiritual material, when it's like when I say to you, we live in two worlds at once, the physical world and the spiritual world. Oftentimes they can be they can be perceived as something exclusively separate. Kind of like almost like, imagine someone who's all about God when they go to church, but then outside of that, they're just doing whatever. No sense of purpose or direction or whatever, or just might be chaotic in their life or something. I don't know. Terrible example. I'm sure I can come with a better one. But where was I going to go with this? So the yeah, now I remember. So usually there's that separation, but in reality, when it comes to just how we work with daily things, the spiritual and the material are interwoven, are are interconnected. Take for example, right? I'm hoping that I gave you a sense of like the difference between like spiritual and material maintenance and just the dynamics. But say you're doing an exercise. Let's say you go for a run outside. The material part of it is like, okay, you're taking care of your physical body, you're getting your muscles, you're kind of getting like a cardio workout, and you're just going out there and giving your body physical movement, right? There's that part of that the necessary material maintenance, but all the while, the spiritual part of it. When you exercise, why do you usually exercise? Because I know for me and what I hear often, and this especially also happens, this is also for me too when I'm riding my bicycle. When we have when I've had like a stressful day at work or I've had so much going on, riding has been a source of just clearing my mind and just being focused in the moment, letting go of the whole day, what's happened in the past, releasing all of that, and just connecting in the beautiful now with where I'm at, riding my bicycle outside in the streets of DC, and just making my way, taking the long scenic route oftentimes to just enjoy being outside, away from all the stuff that I've been dealing with, and just recharging myself. The spiritual. Can you see how the integration in that example that I shared? Maybe or maybe not. But it's all right, no big. All practice. We're all practicing here. At the end of the day, and I think that's part of even when it comes to maintenance, it's a part of our practice. And I think, no, I know when with maintenance and when we find ourselves doing things, and when I find myself doing things over and over again, something that I have to remind myself from a big picture perspective is that with routine comes stability. And stability is an important ingredient when it comes to doing our own work spiritually here. Whatever that looks like for you, whatever it looks like to your neighbor, whatever, we all got our own mission spiritually, our purpose, what we came here to do, experience, like life lessons, what we came here to work with. And what was I going to? So I think, all right. So stability, right? A necessary component, for us to do our work here. Now, there's a place for everything. And I think generally, for the most part, that's what we normally what we're all working with. It's just the routines, the stability, and then there may be times when we have to change it up a bit, which is also just as important. We don't want to always just keep doing the same thing repeatedly doing things over and over again. Not while we have this innate capacity to refine how we do things. It was through my recent experience with my last job opportunity that made me realize is that when we're whatever kind of practice or craft, whatever that we do, if we keep at it long enough, there's this natural tendency to I mean, I want to say tendencies. I want to say something more innate there's this innateness to refine what it is that we're doing. Now, there might be some people that genuinely just, if you give them time, they'll just keep repeating things over and over again. But I would also wager that with time, people approach how they do things differently. And that's because of perhaps mistakes that they've made along the way. Okay, I did this, now I'm not going to do this no more. So those kind of simple refinements, right? Again, that right, just sharing that example right there is why also it's important for the stability piece, so that we start experiencing certain things, life lessons and things like that, start showing up again and again, recognizing, okay, here's where I'm having trouble or challenges is in. But then in time, with the commitment and doing the inner work and the practice and reflecting, it's like, okay, I can see now where I can improve more. Okay, I think I can do this better. Let me try this next time. Let me practice this. And this is like this beautiful dance that happens in the midst of routines, in the midst of day to day. And I think that's very indicative of the reality that as a soul, as a spirit, we have this desire to expand and to want to learn and grow, and just because it's a sense of is a need there. It's like growth is like the reality. When you even when you look at nature, when you look at plant life, when you look at other ant creatures, growth happens all the time. Even just looking at it like material, like growth happens all the time. Our bodies are growing. Like, there's so much growth that happens even from like a microscopic level with bacteria and stuff like that. I'm not going to get too much into it because I'm not like a sciencey biology guy, um, but nevertheless, it's like growth, right? Growth is such an important need. Again, looking at things from nature, the material, and to kind of get a sense of the spiritual reality, growth, evolution of the soul. Y'all picking up what I'm putting down? Yes? No? So maintenance is such a very important thing, and I think and practicing just, okay, I have these things I'm doing, and then taking the time to refine it, which comes with a practice of evaluating your day, journaling type of thing. And even then, many people don't even do that. Many people just go through life and just have experiences which is great. It's a huge part of life. But how many of us take the time to just regroup? And I use the regroup to mean synonymously with reflect. How often do we reflect on our days just to see where those areas where we can refine ourselves? How can we refine it so that ultimately we can have the best quality of life that is available to each and every single one of us? And I do believe that through my core, by just experiences and what I've learned from other people and just what I've witnessed, the best kind of life is available. The best quality of life, the riches of life is there for each and every single one of us. Like that to me is 100% fact. The only caveat is it needs to be accepted. It needs to be considered. It's a matter of a mind shift, attitude, perspective, and really taking the time to evaluate experiences to say, okay, what am I getting in all this? What's going on here? I seem to be noticing themes coming up for me. What's going on with that? Asking those questions. When you look, there's this beautiful symbol at the Way Shores College in their programs when they have them in the lectures. We share when we share with people spiritually to give people a big picture. We often use symbols because symbols have been very powerful throughout human history. Symbols are very powerful ways of communicating to how we interpret things and how we find meanings and things like that, how we can discern and sense things. Even from like looking at a perspective of like numbers. I know for me, numbers have meaning for me. Like when I see the clock and it's 111, 333, and things like that, a symbol that has meaning. And every person has their own version, and there's symbols for each and every individual that they have that has some type of meaning. And that same symbol may not mean the same for other people. But coming back to just the game here. So going back to the symbols where I got it. So there's this one symbol that's the spiral. And it's a spiral that's going upwards. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's going counterclockwise, I believe. Or it might be clockwise, I forget. But that symbol represents evolution, spiritual evolution. And that really does capture really gets to like the mechanic of how we move through this system of planet Earth. It's like that spiral. When you experience life lessons, and let's say you find yourself repeating the same lesson over and over again, where there isn't much growth, rather than a spiral happening, it's more of just a closed circle, and it's on one plane, Imagining just running on a track and field little circuit, and you're just going around it again and again and again and again. But when you take the time to evaluate your experiences, look at, okay, what's been happening, and everywhere from like where could we make some improvements, where can we can make some refinements with the intention of so that we can have the best quality of life. It isn't to say that, oh, I did this wrong, I did that wrong, or did this. In no way, shape, or form, when it comes to regrouping, it should never have to be that way. That's a terrible relationship with oneself. It should be, when I regroup, it's like doing it from a place of like, of just meeting myself with compassion and patience and understanding, like, okay, what could I do better? And it's doing it so that I can have, like, taking better care of myself, so that I can feel better about myself, so that that translates and I carry that into all my daily opportunities, be it work or anything at home or even in social settings. And so doing those practices and taking a little bit of time each day, mind you, it doesn't even require a whole lot, just a few minutes a day, just to evaluate and just clean up house, so to speak, your inner house. Okay, what's happened so far? Then it's like, rather than just going around the track and field, it's like walking up a spiral staircase. So where you find yourself kind of having similar experiences where it feels like a theme playing out. But now it's like making those tiny tweaks and adjustments and showing up differently in those experiences. That's that spiraling up. That's going up those the stairwell, the spiral stairwell, if you will. And also, to give you another visual to the spiral, as it spirals up, the circle, or I guess the circular spiral motion, widens, which represents expansion. Expanding, expanding, expanding. And in that process, what I've come to find in that experience is that I feel a lot lighter than I have been before. And even when I find myself in new situations, or maybe something familiar comes up again that would normally have stressed me out before, but now it don't has as much energy or charge on me. I don't worry as much anymore. Have you ever had that kind of experience where you've been confronted with a situation or a person, something that before you would have felt emotional, upset, or scared, or whatever emotion, right? Just gets you riled up inside, uneasy, this ease. But then you have that experience again, but this time it's like, wait, I don't feel as stressed out as I did before anymore. Have you ever had an experience like that before? If you have, then that's a good measure of spiritual growth. And if you haven't, just implementing some of that time, that spiritual maintenance, which a simple thing you can do starting today is just take some time with yourself. Unplug from your devices, unplug from the computer, the television, whatever. Even unplug from like listening to music, any kind of stimulation. And maybe it might not be in your current situation, you might not have this available, but being in your own room, in your own space where you're nice and quiet, some kind of physical sanctuary where you're by yourself. Or maybe you can go to a local park outside where you're just by yourself for the most part, to just check in with yourself, to see how things are going. And I think in this exploration, something that I've learned and I'm still learning is to not impose so much on yourself. Like whether you do or you don't, and you're looking to incorporate more of you time with yourself, just to be aware of any pressure. Because sometimes I'll get pressure on myself, like I have to do something. I have to produce something. Like, can I just be with myself? Can I just allow myself to just, if I'm going outside and I'll just observe out in the streets, people, the nature, like the trees, plants, and things like that. What if can I just allow myself to just observe? Allow myself to just be, And that could be a good intention. Like, okay, If you don't necessarily have it, you're not the type of person that maybe you're not sure about having to spend some time a little bit each day to just evaluate your day without maybe perhaps being too critical. Maybe you just give yourself the space to just be with yourself and allow the feelings or anything that's coming up or that maybe perhaps you've kind of pushed down or stuffed down within yourself to be released. And that's an important aspect, I believe, to spiritual maintenance, because I know many of us, like I know I can speak for myself, of this tendency to just internalize into stuff, feelings, emotions, and thoughts, and like, oh, I'm not gonna feel these. No, I'm gonna run away. No, I can't feel this. Can you relate? Do you find yourselves fighting, avoiding feeling your feelings? Or maybe any worries or something you've had in your head and you're just like, nope, I'm not going to worry about it. Nope, I'm going to forget it. The way I see it, just sitting with those feelings that you may or may not be, but that you might not have been paying attention to, but that have come up for you. And they may often, the good chance they might be repeated occurrences. You could set the intention when in your personal me time, spiritual maintenance, to just sit with the feelings that come up. I think it's important for us, as part of our spiritual maintenance, to really allow ourselves to feel what we feel, allow to think that, not act on, like feel feel the feelings, right? And maybe kind of give space for any thoughts that's come up, but not definitely act on the thoughts, especially if they're very negative or something. Like I say this because of intrusive thoughts are things. Intrusive thoughts are a thing. Just because, and if you know what intrusive thoughts are, my understanding of it is like when thoughts pop up into people's mind or my mind that seems very drastic or crazy, that oftentimes that would involve hurting somebody, you know. But me personally, I would not act on that. Nor would I would ask anybody, other person, to just like, don't have to act on all your thoughts, because not all thoughts belong to you. Not all thoughts are yours or have to do with you. They're just experiences that you and I are having. So back to the spiritual maintenance, I think is to approach it with a sense of ease, relaxation. Again, the physical stuff that I mentioned, like exercising, stretching, going for a walk, even when you're taking a shower. I know for me that's been something super helpful for me, where I just sit with any thoughts that are coming up, any that I know that don't serve. Okay, let me just guide those to the side. All right, nope. Sit with my thoughts, not anything that comes through that I might be picking up in the environment. Kind of looking at it like that, because we are super sensitive. You are super sensitive, and you can pick up thoughts from other people that aren't yours. And I share that because I think it's an important reality to communicate to people, that I think it's important for people to understand. Otherwise, there'll be confusion in the mix, misunderstandings. It's important, all this to say, doing the material and the spiritual, why they're both equally as important and they're interconnected in our daily efforts. It's important to tend to it and to be vigilant with it. Because in my experience and what I've witnessed, if I don't do my due diligence with maintenance, my own maintenance, mind you, this is like all up to this point, I've been talking about your relationship with yourself, my relationship with myself. Just something to give you a perspective here, a good frame. It's important to take care of doing the maintenance, because otherwise, whatever actions we do, typically we're hardwired for habits and things. And if we don't take care of our and do our due diligence with our maintenance, we'll find ourselves doing some kind of pattern behavior actions that aren't in our best interest, that could be more destructive. And that will compound. Given the nature and the system of this planet, it will compound. And before you know it, something will manifest itself, oftentimes physically. Some kind of disaster or tragedy will strike. And oftentimes, that's when people will then decide to change or do something about it. When something external, some kind of tragedy wakes them up. Which on one hand, it's a good thing because it helps people to actually get out of their comfort zone and be like, yo, I actually need to do something here. I need to shift and change something here. Not I mean, it helps. I mean, but it's not the best way to go about it though, to wait until tragedy to change. But rather just change from a sense of this need within, this sensing within, like, okay, I need to actually, there's a need arising right now and I need to make a change. Not waiting for that thing or some crisis to happen before we truly change, you know? So with doing the maintenance is being sensitive to what's going on in the world, because whatever we do day in and day out compounds, and we can either be vigilant and make sure it's something good that builds us, or be negligent, unaware, or ignorant and allow not so good things to break us down. And that isn't to say that those who are ignorant or not aware, shame on them. They don't know any better, and it's not their fault. I say this also while acknowledging we're all having experiences here, and everybody's figuring it out. It just so happens I've come across and done a lot of work on myself and come across people to teach me to, so that I know better, have a greater awareness, and why I'm sharing, doing my part, sharing with you to educate the masses what I've learned, with the intention of, hey, like what I shared earlier about everybody has the best quality of life available to them. Education and awareness goes a long way. Practicing, and you're going light speeds ahead. In your own path, that is. That isn't to say ahead compared to other people, and that's not what it's about, but just in your own timing, in your own path, in your own growth and evolution. There is no race in life. That's a terrible illusion and not reality. Although we are in a competitive world and environment, a competitive school, it's part of the game, but it doesn't capture the entire essence or a universal reality, universal truth. When it comes to our spiritual world, when it comes to us as a soul having a human physical experience. And so, if you find yourself at a place where perhaps you already know that there's some things that you want to change but can't seem to, give yourself the grace and patience and love and forgiveness too. It's all right. I still do things. I'm just like, why am I doing these things or these habits? Why am I, for example, over concerned and worry? I know better, but I find myself over concerned about little nuances, little things here and there. I'm like, and that's okay. Part of the experience, or at least part of my experience for that matter. I think it's just important just to have patience. Have patience. Take care of, I think it's more for us to take care of our own spiritual needs. Because when we do that, we show up our best selves when we taking care of our material maintenance, our daily opportunities, our daily responsibilities. So the self-care piece is important because that helps you show up in all your other relationships, be it at work, social, and in your family, whatever that looks like, whatever your family is to you. And again, all this to say again is just that it starts with the self and working on that fundamental foundational relationship, our relationship with ourselves. Because in some sense, it starts and ends with us. Through all our experiences in life, it always comes back to us. It always comes back to you. Not from a egotistical perspective, but from a spiritual life's lessons, journey, spiritual growth, evolution, perspective. No one can help you grow. Only you can grow yourself. People can help guide, but you have to do your part for yourself. And it's necessary to show up. And I think showing up is what has helped me be more open and receptive to the best life that's available to me. Trying to claim the cake that's available to me. And I hope and trust that you're doing your part to claim your cake, what's available to you. So, some things to think about is like, how's your current routine and maintenance? Do you have your own built-in spiritual maintenance in place? If not, would you want to start? Do you see how important it is? If so, what's something simple you can do starting today to have a simple spiritual routine, spiritual maintenance? And how might working on your spiritual maintenance, your self-care, if you will, your mental health, if you will, how might working with those routines help you with your material routines and your daily responsibilities? What would that look like for you if you took care of and acknowledge, honoring, and address a lot of your own personal spiritual needs and wants? Just some questions I wanted to just throw your way. I feel like this episode has been very interesting, at least for me, just sharing all of this. Very, very important, all of this. At the end of at least I hope. My goal is to at least is to give you a sense of like this need to have concern about this, because this does contribute to our quality of life and what the type of experiences that we have and we attract. Because we're like magnets in many ways. From a spiritual perspective, we're like magnetic in many ways. So if you made it this part the episode, I thank you so much for your precious time and your attention. I hope this stimulated something. I hope you take something, anything, if it's even just one small thing. I encourage you to just take action on it, whatever shape or form that it looks like. Maybe writing it down. Maybe it's a word or phrase that I said. Taking action on something that resonated with you, that stimulated with you. What I find, it helps to take some kind of action. And it's something small and simple. Like I said, just maybe like writing it down. Maybe a word that stood out to maybe I said something and the word stood out. You can write that word down and stick it on your mirror or whatever place you kind of look at, just to kind of sit with and meditate. All I share is just for all suggestions. Nobody's obligated to. I can't force you or make you. That's the beautiful thing about universal free will, freedom. No one can't control us, because innately we're all free. So all I can do on my part is just to encourage others to just take care of their relationship with themselves. And that's my big thing. That's what I care about. So if any of this resonates, I invite you to just tune in to anything I said, or check out also my resources in the show notes as well if you're looking to work with your intuition more, or find it. If you're interested in working with your spirit guides, again, I have some resources in the show notes below. Check them out, and and I wish you the best in your future endeavors. This has been another episode of Spirit Engineered. I'm your host, Alvin Zapeta, signing out. And as always, take care, my dear friend.